Welcome to the Comanalytics channel. This is Boris Tizengauzen with you. Today is September 14th. There is a lot of important news. In this issue, Schrödinger sanctions Trump with a shock from his statement. Russian escorts are stationed right on the full shore of Poland, and Russian drones are already attacking Romania. Putin and Lukashenko are reacting to a nuclear strike on Europe, and to the capture of the Suwałki corridor. And the Republicans are already losing patience because of Trump. So, what now? Ukrainian drones have hit the most important targets on the territory of the Russian Federation. There will be a lot of interesting things about this and more in today's episode. So if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So, while some are still coming up with reasons why it's not yet time to impose sanctions against Russia, Ukrainian drones continue to impose their own sanctions on the Russian Federation's oil equipment industry. An oil refinery in the Kaliningrad region was attacked last night. This is an oil refinery. This is a real city-scale factory. It's the second largest in Russia. It produces 20 million tons of oil per year. Only the Omsk refinery is bigger than this one. Just imagine. A refinery stretching for many kilometers, and today this refinery was attacked. A real attack took place. Let's watch this video. Honestly, I thought this video wasn't from Russia because there wasn't a single sign in the background. And not just this refinery, but also this video. You immediately realize it's from Russia because it shows drones attacking another large refinery near the legal federal district. A cellar was set up there. And let me remind you, the peculiarity of this attack is that this refinery is 1,350 kilometers from Ukraine. Watch this video. Oh my. Oh my. Yeah, well, it's immediately obvious that the video is from Russia. Seriously, sometimes when I'm filming, I wonder how you could mess up so much in just a few seconds. No, some Russians have that skill. So small, yet so proud. Ukrainian drones have caused fuel destruction at their refineries in several regions of Russia, all at once. And now about Schrödinger's sanctions, or rather Trump's sanctions. I say that I am ready to impose serious sanctions against Russia when all NATO countries do the same and stop buying Russian oil, said Donald Trump. Well, there's your answer. So, if Hungary and Slovakia suddenly stop buying Russian oil, then it turns out that Trump hasn't imposed sanctions. You couldn't give Putin a bigger gift. This is simply a wonderful gift-wrapped offer. I'd just like to remind Trump that Putin's reign is in October. It's too soon to give him such royal gifts. And it's not just this entire letter that the US president sent to all NATO countries. Overall, it's a letter sent by President Donald Trump to NATO and the whole world. I'm ready to impose greater sanctions against Russia when all countries agree and start doing the same. And when all NATO countries stopped buying Olivier from Russia, as you know, NATO's contribution to victory was much less than 100%. And for some countries, buying Olivier from Russia was shocking. And I think only after they stopped to buy, the imposition of 50 or 100% duties perhaps. And then there is a special clause in brackets. These duties should be lifted after Russia's war against Ukraine ends. And it is very, very important to stop this miserable, senseless war. This is not Trump's war. It would never have started if I had been president. This is Biden's and Zelensky's war. I'm only here to stop it and to save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. 7,118 lives were lost last time. It's unbelievable. Oh, look, in my school they used to call people like that a skateboard. Well, that's a level 100 joke. It's like shifting the blame onto everyone else, anyone but yourself. Overall, obviously, we're on the sidelines. Now, in the near future, there won't be any sanctions. And the most interesting thing is that Donald Trump said this is a war between Biden and Zelensky, but he didn't even mention Putin. NATO, Biden and Zelensky, they're the ones to blame for everything. Well, and also, just for the record, Europe has reduced its purchases of Russian oil. In 2020, they bought 16.5 million, And in 2025, they bought 1.7 million. Well, that's 10 times less, but they're still buying. But those who are buying Russian oil now are mainly Hungary and Slovakia. Trump doesn't mention them in his letter to the whole world either. And the most interesting thing is that in 2027, Europe plans to completely refuse to buy Russian natural gas on the spot. Moreover, the head of the U.S. Department of Energy, Christopher Reed, confirmed this plan. That is, Trump once again came up with some non-existent excuse not to impose sanctions against someone with whom he has good, excellent relations. And it did not take him long to come up with this scheme. That is, please, anyone is to blame. Biden, Zelensky, Europe, Martians, aliens, but not Russia and Putin. And why shouldn't the United States impose sanctions on their own, without any additional reason? Why should Europe have to do it? Is that first? Why didn't they do it earlier? Or maybe the United States shouldn't look back at anyone at all, and they have their own position and a clear strategy. Or maybe they no longer have a clear strategy. And here's another thing, by the way, that I picked up for Trump. He took some time, gathered resources, and came up with new options. If suddenly someone doesn't like these, for example, I'll impose sanctions only when not a single Russian tourist remains in Turkey. That's also possible. Or when not a single Russian oligarch remains in London. That's also possible. By the way, for Europe to stop buying Russian oil, as Trump demands in this article, you just need to connect to Orban, pick up the phone, get in touch with Orban, and say a few kind words to this Philistine oil. Overall, there's a sense that, by the way, Orban, well, I'm not just talking about the United States and Donald Trump, but also about Europe. That is, there's a feeling that Orban was properly briefed. The role of a good-for-nothing in the European game. Like, let me give you a good-for-nothing joke, and you'll act like a good-for-nothing. And we'll come to you, we'll cheer you up like a good-for-nothing, we'll all be delighted. But in practice, we won't do anything for you, because none of this is real. It's a big, beautiful player. You don't have that feeling. Well, let's be honest, in recent weeks Ukraine has sent some fiery greetings of friendship with its drones and ambition, so Orban is going to have problems with ammunition. No friendship, no oil. And that's the price of such a policy, which Donald Trump is now continuing, giving a few ultimatums, deadlines. I will not impose sanctions. Now everyone is to blame except Putin. That's the price of this policy. Russia is deploying Iskanders on the road in the Kaliningrad region. Here's the video now, and right next to the Polish border. The purpose of this provocation is absolutely obvious. Just like the provocations with Russian drones in Poland, it's to increase the flow of weapons from the country to the eastern states. And of course, to reduce the amount of weapons in Ukraine. That is, Ukraine never has enough weapons. We are facing very serious opponents. And that's the price of this policy. Last night a minesweeper flew into Romanian territory. Poland turned off all its security systems, turned off its planes. Well, in general, go ahead and subscribe to this, not only Poland, but Romania as well right now. And the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk reported that all security systems on the country's territory have been put on high alert. And also, the deployment of Polish and NATO aircraft has begun. And Poland closed the Lublin airport last night. So, go ahead and subscribe to this. In other words, there will be no reaction, there will be no sanctions. This blue Kremlin chicken will be completely unpunished. It is already completely unpunished. And look at what was done. The drone moved about 20 kilometers north of the settlement of Kyiv and soon disappeared from radar. That's what is being said on the Romanian side. That's all. The department stated that the drone did not cross residential areas and did not pose a direct threat to the population. Oh yes. Well, another statement. F-16s are ready to fire at the Russian drone. But it turned sharply and flew toward Ukraine, said the Romanian defense minister. I saw that video today, and it turned sharply. I saw the F-16, and it flew toward Ukraine. It was targeted, it wasn't shot down, and they drove it away. In Ukraine, you can do whatever you want, shoot it down. So they wanted to, but they didn't shoot it down. You know, when you were a kid, you were probably that kind of kid at school or at home somewhere. Yeah, that's what they say. I wanted to give him a chance, but suddenly I got sick. That probably happened. Or why didn't you come? We agreed to fight there, group against group. He was like, oh, my parents won't let me go there and so on. That's all. And look, this phrase, it's the scariest one. It seems to me that the drone did not pose a direct threat to the population and did not enter the area. Do you know why that's scary? And what is it? For me, in the worst case, it's a classic Overton window. When something that was previously completely unacceptable becomes normalized. Yes, it shouldn't have been there at all. There was no danger, and so on. What word will come next? Well, drones were flying, but they didn't kill anyone. They were just shifting the Overton window. Yeah, well, they didn't fly over residential areas. Well, if they did kill, it wasn't that many. More people die in plane crashes every day. Oh, and they're shifting the Overton window again. So, do you understand what's happening? The fact that Russian drones are entering the airspace of countries, including NATO countries, is becoming the norm. And that's absolutely unusual. By the way, friends, let me remind you that the heroic Ukrainian defenders are now holding back this massive Russian war machine. And right now Putin is doing everything possible to destroy more Ukrainian land. But our soldiers have withstood his entire seasonal offensive. You've seen that the Russian side hasn't achieved any success. And the collection, an important collection. If you want to help Ukrainian soldiers, join in. The collection is for a separate brigade named Bohdan Khmelnytsky, who are right there near Pokrovsk, giving the Russians a hard time. So I ask you to support them. They are defending Ukraine. They are protecting us, so let's support them. Not many people have contributed to this collection yet. ATVs have already been registered for them. They will take them as soon as we close the collection. I asked you to join in. And of course for me as well. I always say a huge thank you for your support. The link to the collection is in the description of this video. There's private, there's mono, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And here's the QR code, in case you suddenly don't see the details under this video. And here's another result of Donald Trump's policy. Russia, this is already from the Wall Street Journal, says that Russia has significantly increased its attacks on Ukraine since Donald Trump got involved, not forgetting his calls for peace. The most intense bombing occurred in September, although the interception rate of targets by the Ukrainian side remained stable. More drones as part of the offensive means more destruction. Let me remind you that only recently, Russia delivered a record number of drones to Ukraine, 810 of them. And there were also missions. And what's important in this material is that Russia often intensifies strikes immediately after agreements or phone conversations between representatives of the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. And I think many people have noticed this. Let me tell you this. As soon as there was a phone conversation between Trump and Putin, or a meeting in Alaska, or whenever some event took place, we immediately said it here. Oh, Trump talked to Putin again. Well, in his understanding, that means there will be shelling today. So, this always happened. And that's how it was. And I'll remind you about this champagne chronology. Trump announces sanctions against Putin and gives him 50 days. Putin ignores these threats and continues bombing Ukraine. Trump shortens his ultimatum by 10 days and says, "That's it, my patience has run out." Why are they meeting with Putin in Alaska? Absolutely no result. No one understood what that meeting was about. Well, that's all. After every shelling of Ukraine, Trump says he doesn't like it. He's not happy. Then, a full 50 days passed, not just 10 as he had previously shortened it to. The 50-day ultimatum finally ended. Still there was nothing, no response or action from Trump. Putin completely recovered from this and sent 20 drones to the field. Trump tells him, well, that might have been a mistake. Donald Tusk can't stand it anymore and replies that it's not a mistake. They fired 20 drones at the target in the field. Well, and then Trump keeps thinking and thinking about who else he can blame, and says, well, considering when Europe will stop buying Russian oil and gas. That is, if Putin attacks one of the NATO countries with missiles and Hungary doesn't stop buying Russian oil, Trump won't impose sanctions. And if the drones hit the US, Trump will say, oh my God, it was a mistake. It happens to everyone. What kind of joke is this? Just think about what's happening. And I would like to remind you that against this dictatorships, the club actively helps each other. They doubt their unity, they doubt their own team. Well, for one thing, Donald Trump, first of all. He immediately blames the players on his team for being weak, tries to compare the US to Europe, as if that destroys his own team. You know, that same worker who comes to the team to talk to others, eventually stops fighting, leaving behind that dull floor, the team that used to talk until a certain point. Well, for addicts, this is typical behavior. And at the same time, after Donald Trump shot into the Shakespearean world with his endless sanctions, to be or not to be, the behavior of the wicked old men who revived their spirit is absolutely natural. So, Putin and Lukashenko are passing by a military war and an attack on NATO during the Western 2025 exercises. They began on September 12th. These are Russian-Belarusian exercises. Just over 18,000 soldiers are participating in them. Of those, 5,500 are Russian. But this figure isn't so small if you consider the possible reaction or lack thereof from those they might threaten. So, what will they be practicing? Two key strategies, and the use of armed weapons and mid-level ammunition has already been practiced. That is, the main element of these exercises is the simulation of using armed weapons and handguns, which are planned to take place in Belarus. Well, according to Putin, by the end of this year. Well, we don't know when, and we don't even know if Putin actually has this handgun for himself. In other words, only a replica was dropped into an empty area without any weapons near the Dnipro. After that, there were attempts to launch it, but unsuccessfully. Well, naturally, these threats led to the direct closure of the border with Belarus by Poland, which simply irritated the Russian Ministry of Defense, and they started joking, saying, "What are you talking about? You can't do that." Quote. That is, the Russians and Belarusians are responding to a nuclear strike, an invasion by Poland itself. They launch drones into Poland, into Romania, and say that you have no right to deceive us for this. You have no right to close the borders. Go to hell, Russians. And what else are they responding to? An attack on the Suwałki Gap. That is, officially they will have some kind of equipment, a path for the enemy who has infiltrated the equipment. Well, and in general, look at what they are going to do. RIA Novosti reported that equipment will be deployed in the Kaliningrad region, which terrorist representatives of NATO supposedly want to seize. That is, NATO wants to destroy the Kaliningrad region. Experiments are taking place in Belarus, so what should the group do? Turn to help the Kaliningrad region, that is, cross the gap or the blockade. They have to defend Kaliningrad in this way. That's what they will be practicing. Well, seeing a very weak response from the alliance to these, well, absolutely unpredictable events, let's imagine a situation where tomorrow Russian and Belarusian soldiers start moving towards Suwałki. They continue along the Suwałki border, blocking it from both sides. More. Another Russian group brings them to Kaliningrad. That is, they don't actually shoot at anyone, and they might not even have any distinguishing marks or identifying features. Putin likes to send out a few of these so-called little green men. So, they arrive and block the Suwałki corridor. Move in and take up defensive positions. What are you gonna do? That's all. And before long, they find fragments of some unidentified Eastern aircraft in the Kaliningrad region. And they'll say that NATO attacked them. We were forced to go to our enclave, and that's it. And how will the alliance respond? And how will the US respond? Donald Trump will say that they were attacked. And Hungary is still buying Russian oil. Oh well, I went to play golf. Did you see how he recently asked about the murder of Charlie Kirk? He says yeah there, and, you see, he says these tricks, I'll build a Balkan here. No one has built a Balkan in 120 years, I'll build it or something. I don't know what's going on. By the way, that's not a joke. That's the definition in the words of some European leaders, but that doesn't mean they're not afraid when action is needed. Especially, well, imagine what the alliance would do. Let's quickly go through the article. Article 4, quickly Poland, let's go through Article 4 again, we'll listen. And then they'll say, well, when administrative planes were flying up to 40 kilometers, they'll say, well, listen, that's the Suwałki corridor. Well, it's not that big, you know. Then Putin says that in order to ensure the security of the Kaliningrad region, we must control this corridor. We can write this into our constitution. What are you going to do? And then he effectively cuts off the rest of the Baltic allies. We need to talk about what will happen after that. I think that's clear to everyone. That's why NATO has two main models of behavior right now. Yes, reduce subsidies to Ukraine. Everything just for themselves. Let's go close the border with an air defense system. Well, you won't shoot at Russian drones like patriots do. Or act differently, do something inconvenient for Putin and the Kremlin, so that these drone provocations, they will remember them later in their sleep, because if not, well, Russia won't stop. Putin will not stop. By the way, Russia is currently building what is set to be the largest electronic intelligence antenna complex in the Kaliningrad region, located just 25 kilometers from the actual border. They not only jam your GPS with their electronic warfare, disrupting navigation for aircraft and ships, but they will also do a lot of other bad things. So of course the second option is to give Ukraine everything they can. A shield and border defense system for the rest of Europe. Let's show everyone that this is action. Are you ready to move into Ukraine and remove all restrictions? I've already said this 100 times. Remove those who are supporting the missions. First, of course, the missions, and then all restrictions on strikes on Russian territory will be lifted. And maybe one day Ukraine will see tourists. Plus, of course, sanctions. That is, the Danish straits have long been ready so that the Russian shadow can't pass through them. By the way, you could put Greta Thunberg there with flags. The tankers are old, they burn a lot of oil, so it's the perfect place for her. So yes, nearby, isolate Kaliningrad, close the borders, that's it, goodbye. Close the borders with Belarus, goodbye. Well, and they are pulling out the maximum number of Russian residents from Europe, those who work there as diplomats. These are the minimum actions that should be taken. If there is no serious accountability, then Putin will say, oh how wonderful, now there are 50 drones, which means they'll be flying along the borders of all the countries, and then I'll quickly show them all off. The Suwałki Gap, and further down the list. And in the Ukrainian Union, it seems they are starting to assume something, demanding tough sanctions against Russia. On the other hand, Donald Trump has two Republicans, Lindsey Graham and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, who will try to introduce new sanctions against Russia. Well, as Reuters says, they will use a bit of a legitimate trick. They will attach their bill to an urgent government funding document so that no one can ignore it. Well, they might not introduce it separately, but when it's part of an important package, then you'll have to make a choice. And of course, the authors of the bill. Lindgren has developed an excellent bill imposing a 500% duty on those who purchase Russian energy resources. All Donald Trump could squeeze out at the time was introducing a 50% duty on Indian products. Some groups, fuel, didn't even get that far. Well, basically he turned things upside down and also slightly increased tariffs on China. We saw how they were actively communicating and having fun in Beijing, Xi Jinping, Mozart and Putin. So, let me remind the Republicans that these are Donald Trump's federal parties. We will ask colleagues from both sides to join this initiative and stand together with freedom against tyranny. Well, and of course, this bill allows for secondary sanctions against countries that continue to buy Russian energy resources. We are living to see this happen. The Republicans were forced to join the logical trajectory to impose sanctions against the tyrant and aggressor who is openly attacking NATO. And let me remind you that the United States is the foundation of NATO. That is, in reality, Putin attacked the United States, among other things, with these 20 drones. And the Republicans were somehow forced, even if just barely, even with just a framework, to push through this bill. What a shame. Oh, and by the way, I have another question. What's going on with the Democrats? Do they even exist? Is it because maybe I'm not seeing the news? Maybe they and Elon Musk secretly left for Mars? What's happening? Where? Where were the Republican primaries? Well, at the end of the program, I'd like to show you a video to understand how they think about Putin and Russia. I've subscribed to Street Polls, and sometimes I come across clips like these. Anyway, watch this video. I only get 15,000, a pension, 15 something, but my Divana passed away, so I have some money. I paid those 100,000 so that, well, that's it, so they wouldn't choose me anymore. Now I don't know, it's unfortunate. What to do next, how to live, I don't know. So this woman complains that she has to pay some damages and she doesn't understand anything. But the phrase, my 2 sons died, I have money, and she says it like somehow, my 2 sons died, I have money. She means that Putin pays 5 million for the angle, but in reality, he pays for the angle. For those who go to war and are killed, that's where he pays. If it's proven, then he pays 5 million. Here you have it. Here you have Putin's Russia. My 2 sons died. I have money. That's it. That's why a huge wall needs to be built on the border with the Russian Federation. It needs to be thoroughly constructed, so that not only drones can't fly over it, but even thoughts can't get through, until something changes inside and normalization begins. Well friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, and let's support our soldiers. If you have the opportunity, support this fundraiser for a separate brigade named Bozie Khmelnytsky for our defenders. Good luck to all of us and blessings to Ukraine.